Science Public Library. My name is Brent, and today we're making pizza from scratch. So let's go over our ingredients real quick. I do have a batch of bread dough here. This is the same dough we used a couple weeks ago, so if you remember that episode, same stuff. We're going to talk a little bit about making some sauce here. I've got a little tomato paste, a can of tomatoes, a little olive oil, and I got black pepper, salt, oregano, and a little garlic. And then our toppings. We've got a pound of mozzarella here, and then we've got some mushrooms, some red peppers, some onions, and some ham. You can use whatever toppings you like, but these are my faves. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and get our crust going. So I have a steel baking sheet right here. Now we talked about with cookies the other day about how to use the lighter colored sheet because it doesn't blow the heat through quite as fast. In this case, we're using a steel sheet, and we're using one that's a little bit darker colored because we want heat for this. It's a good idea to get your oven preheated well in advance. We're going to start out with a 500-degree oven today, so get that thing going early. When you're doing it on a pan, you want to make sure that you've got some oil on the pan. We're going to take about a tablespoon of oil. Exact measurement is not super important in this case. We're going to brush it out to coat the pan nicely, and then we're going to get our crust going. Now with the dough, you want to make sure that you make your dough up far enough in advance that it has some time to settle and relax a little bit, because you don't want to be trying to spread dough that is just fresh off of the knead cycle, because it's very elastic and it will not stay where you put it. It'll stretch and then it'll bounce back. So. And I made it up just a little bit stickier than I would if I was making bread. So it's a little bit looser. It's got a little bit more water in it, about maybe a tablespoon more than I would do otherwise. And we're just going to use our fingers and just press and spread this out. You can see it's snapping back a little bit, but not too bad. So I'm going to take a few moments and finish this up, and we'll come back. Now, as you're spreading this out, it may take you a little while to get this done. If it's not reacting the way you want it to, let it sit for a few minutes, walk away, give it 10 minutes or so to relax a little bit so that you can continue stretching it out to the edges. And then once you've got that done, go ahead and let it sit for about a half hour. We're going to put some plastic wrap on this and just let it finish relaxing and start to rise a little bit. So while we're waiting for that crust to relax a little bit, we're going to go ahead and start our sauce. So I got a 14.5-ounce can of diced tomatoes. This is because I like a chunky sauce. You can use, just regular, tomato sauce if you want to. I got a 6-ounce can of tomato paste here. You ever had trouble getting tomato paste out of a can? Open both ends. That way you can just slide it right out. You don't have to screw around with a spoon too much. I've got a teaspoon each of black pepper, kosher salt, and oregano. And I got 1 clove of garlic here. We'll put that in there, and I'm going to add about a tablespoon of olive oil. And then we're just going to mix this together. When you're making pizza sauce, it's a real good idea to have a much thicker sauce than you would use for pasta. That's why I'm using the tomato paste in there. So this has had a chance to set and rise a little. We're going to go ahead and pull the plastic wrap off of it. And there are a bunch of different ways to start off a pizza. Today, we are going to put the sauce right on the crust and then put the cheese on top. It is not the only way to do it. You can put the cheese down and then put the sauce on top. There's so many different ways to do this, and they all work for different reasons. So, go ahead. Now this is a chunkier sauce, so it doesn't spread quite as well as something without the chunks in it. But I like this particular one. If you were to do this a little bit differently, you might use, say, a 12-ounce can of sauce with the paste rather than the can of the diced tomatoes. Either way works. So this is a pound of mozzarella. I bought the block and then shredded it myself. You can use the pre-shredded stuff, but I don't particularly like to because they add stuff to that to keep it from clumping. Well, the stuff they add to it also does weird things to the way it melts. And if you want it to melt really nicely, you want to avoid those additives. So I just shredded this on a box grater. Another thing you can do, you can get, from the deli, you can get sliced mozzarella, which works really well. Now, there's any number of different cheeses you can use for this. Mozz is traditional, but you can use whatever you like. You just want something that's going to melt nice. So probably avoid a dry, sharp cheddar, because that doesn't melt so well. You just take the rest of your toppings and spread them out more or less evenly on here. A little bit of scattering is fine. Some people like their toppings under their cheese. Some places like it over the cheese. We're going to do it on top. If for no other reason, you can see it better. You can tell what there is. And if you got somebody that doesn't like a particular thing, you can do half width or a quarter width or whatever, and then avoid that particular section. So you got took a whole red pepper here and just sliced that up into julienne. I got a whole onion. I didn't use quite the whole thing, but I got about half a pound of sliced mushrooms here. These are creminis, which I think have got a little bit more flavor and a little bit more presence than white button mushrooms, but they're almost the same thing from a perspective of mushroom. Okay, so there is our raw pizza. I'm going to go ahead and pop this in the oven. Got that set for 500 degrees. We're going to leave it in there for about 12 minutes and then we're going to check it. So it's been in for about 24 minutes total now. At the 12-minute mark, I rotated the tray. Pulling that out of there. I'll show it to you a little bit closer here in a second. All right, so this is what we've got. We got it nice, a little bit brown around the edges. Our cheese is nicely melted. We got a little bit of charring on the edges of some of the vegetables. I'm going to go ahead and let this cool for just a moment, then we're going to get it out of the pan. Keep in mind that this pan is extremely hot, so make sure you got a couple of hot pads underneath it when you set it down. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and pop this out of the pan onto a cutting board. I went around with a spatula and just kind of loosened it up a little bit to make sure that I could get it out of here all in one piece. It's one of the reasons you oil the pan, is so that it slides out of there. And we're going to let this cool just for a moment, just so that the cheese isn't liquid when we cut it, and then we'll cut it and plate it. So this has been cooling for just a few minutes, and it's still very hot, but the cheese is no longer liquid. So we're going to go ahead and cut this. If you've got one of those pizza wheels, that works great. If you don't, a big chef's knife works just fine. You don't want to cut this in your pan because it's not good for your knife, and it's not good for your pan. But this works just fine. You can kind of hear that crust crunching a little bit as I cut through it. So go ahead and slide one of those right onto a plate. It's got nice stringy cheese. You can see there's nice brown on the crust there. Go ahead and hit that with a little bit of Parmesan and maybe a sprinkle of crushed red pepper if you like it. Homemade pizza. Very nice. Enjoy.